Oh my goodness. Well, today being Father's Day, like I said, doesn't it just make me think of earthly fathers, and it doesn't just make me think of my own earthly father, but other men who have influenced my life over my lifetime. And so I feel this is a day to honour all men who've had influence on younger generations. And there are three, I've got a picture, I think the picture's going to come up, of my three favourite men at the moment. And I say at the moment because, we never know who might join my favourite men crew. Oh, hang on, where'd they go? Okay, so you probably recognise at least one of the three in there. But if we start from the right, is that your right? Okay, that right. That's my father. And then in the middle is my son. And then it's the Holy Spirit. No, that's my husband. That's my Trinity. Father, Son, and husband. Holy Spirit. I thought it was clever. I wonder who your favourite males are in your life. Whether they're present, whether they're past. Who are the favourite men that have influenced you? Kids, have you got any favourite men in your life? Who? Yes, please, Dad. Okay, there we go. What about you, Daniel? Yes, please, Dad. I think that's the standard response. Anyone else have any favourite men in their life? Father Christmas? Woo. Okay, real people. Okay, children, he is real. Your brother? Cool. Yeah, my brother wasn't in that photo, but he's in my top 4. If he's listening online, I don't think he is, but that's all right. He is in my top 4. Anyone else have favourite men? Your uncle? Stepdad? Yep. Your uncle? You've got a few uncles. Uncles, plural, yes. What about people that may have influenced you over your lifetime? Maybe teachers, coaches, extended family, like cousins, grandparents. Grandfather? Yes. Yep. One of the people that came to my mind as I was preparing this was a teacher that I had in high school. He's not in my top 3, so sorry to my teachers out there. You don't make my top 3. But he's somebody that really came to mind as I was preparing for this. And he really had an influence over me in high school. And he taught social studies. So for kids, social studies has changed names to so many different things. It became society and environment. It was studies of society and environment. And now today it's called HAS. So for any high schoolers at the back, do you know what HAS is? Yeah. What does it stand for? Humanities and Social Studies or something? I don't know. Whatever it stands for. And social sciences, yes, because years ago it used to be social sciences before social studies. But anyway, it's that lovely topic which is a broad range of everything from economics to geography and everything in between. Well, this particular teacher that comes to mind, he taught me history and 20th century history. So all the world wars, all the Cold War, all those different things that have happened in the 20th century. And he gave me a real love for history because he was so engaging and entertaining in the class. And he had travelled a lot around the world, and he had a wealth of experience. And he would even act out in the classroom, and he would tell stories about where he'd been and relate it to world history events. And I remember him doing the military marches for all different countries. So he did the Nazi, I don't know, Goose Step, is it? Yes. And then he did the Russian one, which I can't remember what it's called. And he also did the Chinese communist one as well. So he kind of animated the stories as he would walk around the classroom doing these marches, telling the stories of what happened in those various countries around the world. So significant people in our lives like this inspire us and engage us in life and kind of inspire us to sometimes go along the same paths or to have an interest in what their interests are. And sometimes we even try to emulate. I did not try to emulate and do the military marches, but I certainly bought lots of books about world history. And I remember when I graduated high school, one of the gifts that I got was a 20th century encyclopedia of 20th century history, and it has everything in there from the beginning of the century to, well, it was in the 90s, so it hadn't quite finished the century yet. But I'm pretty sure that excitement and that engagement that teacher brought influenced my decision to eventually become a teacher myself, because it was something that I thought, oh, this is so exciting, I want to kind of do this as well. And at one time in my younger years, I also wanted to become a meteorologist. Does anyone know what a meteorologist studies? Basically the weather, yeah. But I did that because I was interested in that, because I used to watch the weather with my dad, and my dad has a very keen interest in watching the weather and weather patterns. So if you ever need to know what the forecast is particularly in Western Australia, he could probably tell you, the 3-day forecast, and he would be able to tell you what all the maps mean with all the low pressure systems and high pressure systems and such. And so I got a real interest, because it was like a bonding thing. We'd watch the news at night and watch these weather things, and he would tell me about what they meant, and I can't remember any of it now, but at the time I was deeply interested. But sadly, as I got older, I realised that geography, although I'd really loved history, geography was something that I was just no good at. Don't ask me anywhere on a globe where countries are, apart from Australia. I'm very bad. I know North and South America, that's about it, but anywhere else is really quite foreign to me. And so, but obviously my geography teacher wasn't as exciting as the history teacher, because I don't know how you animate clouds and weather patterns and things like that, so it's a bit harder for the poor geography teacher to engage me. But it made me think about following in people's footsteps. Have you ever heard that expression, to follow in someone's footsteps? What does it mean, to follow in someone's footsteps? To be like them, to do what they're doing? Yeah. So it's to do similar things or have similar ways to someone else that maybe you admire or someone that you're close to. So to follow in someone's footsteps is like to follow their example. So the example of who they are, what they do, those sorts of things. So we could use this example, Daniel. I'm going to pick on Daniel because I know that Daniel won't mind. So Daniel is following in his parents, and his grandparents for that matter, in their footsteps in his love and interest in music. Because you like music, don't you, Daniel? What's your favourite instrument? I think we all know. I think he's having a bit of... What one is it? The drums, of course. But some might say he's following in his godfather's footsteps with the drums. But anyway, the music ability, he's following in his family's footsteps and grandparents as well. I wonder if there's something that you've followed in someone's footsteps, someone in your life that you've had influence over you, that you've thought, I want to emulate or do what they've done. Sometimes in life, others may expect us to follow in someone's footsteps. You often hear of people where the mum and the dad are both doctors, and it's expected that the child would then become a doctor too. And there's sometimes pressure to follow in someone's footsteps. But it's not always easy to follow in someone's footsteps. I'm so grateful that both my parents are not doctors, because I would not have coped. I don't mind the sight of blood, but I don't know that I could deal with it every day. And, it's enough just being a parent and having to deal with, those sorts of issues. But I'm so glad I didn't have that pressure. And my mum's a nurse, but it's interesting. My daughter is actually looking at nursing. So I think she's going to follow in my mum's footsteps rather than me. What did you say? Don't do it. Oh, yeah, it's a great profession. Awesome. But sometimes in life, it is hard to follow in someone's footsteps, even if it's someone we really admire and we want to follow. But where else do we see footprints or footsteps? In the sand. Who's been to the beach? Am I the only one that's been to the beach? And I don't even like sand. Who's been to the beach? Have you been to the beach? Yeah. Have you ever seen your footprints in the sand? Yes. Do you have big footprints or small footprints like me? Have you ever seen animal footprints at the beach? Like birds, dogs, horses, hopefully not elephants. I don't know if there's elephants at the beach. Maybe in other countries they might, not in Australia. Who's ever tried to follow someone's footprints at the beach? I have, and often I can't reach because people have got really big footprints. And sometimes it's easy to follow them, sometimes it is hard to follow. And I've got some footprints here. So who would like to come and be a helper with my footprints? Come on up then, Riley. You going to help too? All right, this will be good because we got someone who's shorter and someone who's taller. All right, now I'm going to put some footsteps on the floor, and you've got to wait until I put them all out, and then I want you to follow them and walk on them. Do you think you can have a go at that? Yeah. All right, okay, so just wait. Oh, did you make that one? That looks awesome. Oh, awesome. All right, so we'll put them like this. All right. Do you want to count them? Make sure I've got enough?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, all right. 9, 10. Excellent. Good, I've got them all. All right, so let's go back to the beginning and see if you can walk on them for me all the way to the end. Ooh. That's pretty easy. Woohoo! Oh, good one, Kai. Ah, so how was that? Was that easy or hard? Easy. All right, go back to the beginning. I'm going to move them and then you can tell me what it's like this time. Ugh. Ugh. All right, we'll leave those ones there. All right. All right, you've got to end up at the piano. Are you ready? How are you going to go now? Woo! Oh, well done. Oh! Woohoo! Oh, okay. How was that? Easy or a little bit harder? Easy? All right, okay. One more. All right, hang on. All right, one more. It's easy, is it? Okay, hang on. All right, just move back a little bit because I need a bit of room. You ready? Move back, back, back. Okay, there's your first one. All right, I've made it easier this time. There's less feet. All right, let's see how we go. Oh. Woo! All right, Kai, you go. Pretend there's lava in between them, guys. All right, Riley, you show us how it's done. Oh. Oh. Yeah. That was not easy. That's hard. Oh, did you catch in the lava on the floor? No. Oh, dear. All right. Good on you, Riley. You did good at the long-legged.
I got one.
All right. Thank you very much. Do you want to go put them down on the path and go down to Captain Mark? You ready? No, you don't want the footprints. You can make them. You can make a path to go back to Captain Mark. So sometimes it's easy to follow in someone's footsteps when they're, walking a bit slower and you can kind of catch up and they're not going so quick. When somebody's racing ahead and got big footprints, it's a bit harder to keep up with them. Especially if someone's really brainy or really smart, really wise. They're harder to kind of follow in their footsteps because we have to work at it and our brains get a bit of a workout in that. All right. Sometimes we follow people and they're not always going the right way, are they? We might follow footsteps that just take us off the wrong path and we might go down a path we really didn't want to go. I think they're going the wrong way. Captain Mark's over that way. The footsteps footsteps need to go that way, guys. Oh, look at that, Captain Mark. All right, everyone has to follow Captain Mark. Let's play follow the leader. Do you know how to play follow the leader, kids? All right, so you got to follow Captain Mark. You ready? All right, follow in his footsteps. Awesome. Great illustration. So sometimes we try to follow people and they don't always get it right. And we follow them, like Captain Mark, he's going outside. But anyway. Do we keep following people when they're taking us on the wrong path? Do we keep following in their footsteps because we think, oh, well, they're really good at this thing, but, I'll just follow them in that thing, even though they're not that good at that. I've learnt over my time that although people can positively influence, like many men over my lifetime, they've positively influenced, not everything that they do is helpful. And it's not always helpful to follow anyone that closely because they're human. And humans, we get it wrong. And we won't get it right. And what they do is not always right for me. It might be right for them, but not always right for me. I've also learnt that there is something worth following that is best. That will never fail, that will never take me down the wrong track, that will never lead me wrong, and is the perfect footsteps in which to follow. I wonder if you know too. Jesus. We can follow in the footsteps of Jesus by learning about Jesus and following his example. We can understand how to live well and which direction to go in life and which path to follow. Jesus' life is worth emulating or copying, isn't it? His example. And when we do leave footprints in the sand, and after we follow Jesus, we leave footprints for others to follow so that they can find Jesus too. I hadn't thought about that. We follow in Jesus' footsteps, which is a good example, but as we follow, we leave footsteps for others to see the way to Jesus as well. So, I want to show you a couple of scriptures. So I think I've got them on the screen. Psalm 119 verse 15. I think you've got the wrong version, but that's okay. I've got a different version. So I've got the CEV, which says, I will study your teachings and follow your footsteps. So they just said, consider your ways. So follow the footsteps. So this is talking about following the ways of God, and considering and meditating is about learning and studying, and consider your ways is about following the footsteps. And there's another scripture from Job. Here we go. It says, I followed him closely, my feet in his footprints, not once swerving from his way. Have you followed Jesus that closely? That your feet have followed his same footprints, not once swerving. That's a big task. I don't know that I've come anywhere close, but that's certainly something that I strive to do. So today I want to give you some aspects of Jesus' life that I've been learning. And Mark questioned, he says, is this a very exegetical sermon? Is this, correct in theology? And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't preached for 9 months, so I'm a bit out of practice. But this is about what I've been learning. This is about what Jesus has been teaching me about following in his footsteps. And so this is stuff that I've been mulling over, and God has been showing this to me. And so I will have some scriptures to back it up, and you might think, I want to look at that scripture a bit more. I think that says something different for me, and that's okay. This is some tools, some points. This is not a comprehensive way to follow in Jesus' footsteps by any means. It's just some things that I've been learning personally about how can I follow in Jesus' footsteps. And I just want to share it. So if you want to join me on this journey, happy days. If you want to go, I think I've got different footsteps to follow, that's okay. So do you want to join me in some ways that I've learnt? I'll share today. So the first one is, point 1, Jesus was not rushed. Did you know that? He was a busy man, but he was never rushed. I've never read in any of the Bible stories that Jesus ran. Have you read anything where Jesus was running or rushing anywhere? No. No. In fact, we see quite the opposite. When Jesus gets word about his friend Lazarus, and I think Mark might have preached on this. Did you preach about Lazarus? When he was really sick and dying, they got word to Jesus and said, Lazarus, your friend, is really, really sick. Please come. Do you know what he did? Jesus said to his other friends that were around him, he says, I think we're just going to stay here a few more days. I'm like, what's that? Your friend's sick and dying. But he waited. He waited. You know, I would think that he would hop on his donkey and speed back to his friend's house straight away. Would you do that if you heard of somebody who was sick that was close to you? You'd want to get back there straight away. But no, he turned to his disciples and said, I think we will stay here a few more days. Jesus went through life at a much slower pace than we do today. And you might think, well, that's okay. Back in Jesus' time, they were a bit slower. They didn't, have the technology we have today, and they didn't have the cars and the transport to get everywhere faster. They didn't have fast food or instant emails. But in the time of Jesus, many kings and leaders, and Jesus was a king, he was a king of the Jews, king of all people. Kings and leaders, how would they have got around? They would have ridden on chariots with horses and zoomed in and out of places, getting places, quick for their time. Probably not as quick as a jumbo jet today, but they would have got places fast. How did Jesus get around? He walked. And on the rare occasion, he took a donkey. Like, a donkey is a slow animal compared to the chariots and horses. Jesus deliberately chose those ways despite what he was entitled to or what the world said he should have been doing. And we need to be that same people that choose a different way. We choose the slower way. He deliberately chose to walk or ride a very slow. Are we deliberately choosing a slower pace for our life? Or are we just going along with the fast flow because that's what everyone else is doing and that's what life is like today? Point 2. Jesus allowed interruptions. Again, he was very busy. He had people coming to him all the time, and we often read of stories where Jesus was on the way to someone and then someone else comes into the story. And you're like, well, hang on, he's supposed to be doing this. Well, this person's coming in. One example that comes to mind is when Jesus had met a man called Jairus. And Jairus' daughter was very, very sick. There seems to be a lot of sick people in the Bible, but that's okay. He attends to sick people. So Jairus had come to him saying, my daughter is sick, can you come and see her? Can you come and, work your miracle? I think he was probably, he had faith that this man could do something. And so Jesus says, sure, I'll come along. And so on their way to Jairus' house, they were walking through this great big crowd of people. And a woman came up to him who had been bleeding for 12 years. Do you know this story? And she was desperate to get healing. And so she just wanted to touch the very edge of Jesus' cloak and be healed. And as in amongst this crowd, Jesus felt that power leave from him as this woman touched the cloak. And Jesus stopped. Even though he was on the way to Jairus' daughter, he stopped in that moment and asked, who touched me? Like, they were in a crowd of people. It's like being at the royal show and you're all squishing in between crowds. Like, who was it going to be? It could have been like 50 people had touched him. But he wanted to stop in that moment and acknowledge the woman. He had a conversation with her and stopped in the midst of everything that he was doing. And he stopped to pay attention and acknowledge this woman. Acknowledge not just, oh, glad you're healed, let's go now. He had a conversation and said, your faith is the thing that has brought you healing because you reached out in faith. They are the moments that are precious. Jesus stopped in amongst. If I was Jairus, I'd be going, come on, Jesus, what are you doing? My daughter's sick. But Jesus took the time and had the interruption and met her needs. He could have easily said, oh, no, let's just keep on going because we're on a mission. And I've done that. I'm on a mission. I need to go do this thing. You know, we get so focused, don't we, on the end thing and forget that it's the journey of things that happen along the way that are just as important, if not more. And Jesus still, once he'd had this interaction with the woman, he still went on to Jairus' daughter and heals his daughter too. So he was still part of his plan to actually get to the end part, but he just took the time to meet the interruption. He allowed himself to be interrupted even though he was on a mission to help Jairus' daughter. He was able to take the time to acknowledge the woman and he still went on to Jairus' daughter. Interesting, I realise that we can only engage in these interruptions if we put the first point in practice, that we're not rushed. It's hard to stop in the interruptions if we're running and we're in that rushed business-like fashion. Do we allow interruptions in our life? Or are we too rushed to take the time to stop? Point 3. Jesus met people one at a time. Not only one at a time, this is the majority. He spoke to crowds, he spoke to the groups of his disciples and his friends. But we see it in that story with Jairus. You know, he met Jairus initially one-on-one to address, oh yes, your daughter's sick, let's go. Then he met the woman along the way that needed healing. He dealt with her one-on-one. And then he went to the eventual house of Jairus and had that encounter with the daughter. And one-on-one he was able to heal her. There are so many examples of Jesus encountering people one at a time. He certainly taught the crowds and he certainly healed groups of people. But the key stories are those one-on-one moments where he's having an individual interaction with someone. And the majority of the stories are that one-on-one. Yes, the need was great back then. You know, there were so many people that were sick, so many people that were afflicted with many things for being outcasts. They had disabilities, they had blindness, there were lepers. There were so many people with lots of different needs. People that were just cast out the way because they were different. People that were possessed by demons. People that were sick and blind. And we see Jesus encountering them, healing them individually, encountering them and speaking with them. So many people needed Jesus' attention back then, but so many people also need his attention today. But Jesus could have easily just gone, well, I won't say waved his magic wand because that's not how Jesus worked, but he could have just gone, whoosh, everybody in the room healed. But he didn't. He chose to meet people individually because it was more than just a physical healing that people were looking for. It was that individual interaction, that relationship, the faith that was required, the belief that was required, that was most important in what Jesus' message was. It was about telling people that they were forgiven. It was telling them that their sins were forgiven, that they were healed, that they were spiritually connected to God now that they were physically healed. They are the bits that are the important parts of the story when Jesus interacts with people. I love that our Salvation Army vision statement, and I think we've got it up on the slides as well. It says, wherever there is hardship or injustice, Salvos will live, love and fight alongside others to transform Australia one life at a time with the love of Jesus. That is the model of Jesus. He met people one-on-one. He impacted people's lives one life at a time. Yes, there was certainly healings of great multitude. There were healings and teachings to multitudes of people that were saved in that moment. But the transformation and the number of those transformation stories happened one-on-one with Jesus. I like the statement, do for the one what you wish you could do for the many. Because the need is great today. There is so much need. People struggling financially, spiritually, socially, loneliness. There's so many things going on today. The needs are great. But do for the one that you wish you could do for the many. One at a time. Following in the footsteps of Jesus. One life at a time. Point number 4. Jesus didn't attend to everyone or everything. This was a huge revelation to me because I thought, Jesus can solve everyone's problems. And he came to the earth and he healed everybody. Well, actually, when we read the scriptures, that's not the case. I realised that Jesus did not help everyone during his time on earth. Everybody certainly wanted to probably have a piece of Jesus and they all wanted to come and see him. But he didn't stop all the time. And he didn't stay in the same place for very long. He moved on to other places. He could have instantly sorted out everybody's issues. He could have come down he could have just come down from heaven at any point in time and just go, whoosh, all right, the world's fixed, I'll go back now. But he didn't. He told us, he came down for a purpose, to show us a way that we can live, to have those interactions so that we can follow his model. I thought it was my job to fix everybody. And then I had the revelation, but Jesus didn't fix everybody. Why do I think I have to fix everybody? Do we have to say yes to every request that comes our way? Do we need to say, I'll do that to every little thing that happens? Is everybody's concerns my concern? Jesus certainly didn't operate in that fashion. There was sometimes where he said to people, you do the work. The man that was healed of blindness, he had to pick up the mud and Jesus just told him how to do the things. Jesus didn't just go whoosh with a magic wand and say, oh, you're healed. Like he invites us to be part of the process. We're not the saviours, as I've realised. We're not the ones that can wave a magic wand and sort everyone's problems out. Neither is it our responsibility to do that. But the help came with those individual encounters. And he connected it with faith and belief. So it wasn't always about a physical healing and a sorting out of the issue. Sometimes the issue was still there. It was about the belief and the faith encounter that he had with them. And Jesus also chose to move on from places even though people were still wanting him and needing him. So we're going to look at a passage from Mark, very beginning of Mark chapter 1, verse 35 to 38. It says, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him. And when they found him, they exclaimed, everyone is looking for you. I imagine everywhere he went, people were looking for him. Jesus replied, let us go somewhere else, to the nearby villages, so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. So there were people all wanting, and Jesus says, no, time to move on. Next place. Even though there were people all there, waiting for him, wanting to hear him speak, Jesus knew when it was time to stay and when it was time to stop. He knew when it was time to wait in that space or to move on to the next place. According to the website thebiblespeakstoyou.com, great Great name for a website, thebiblespeakstoyou.com. When you read it says this, when you read some parts of the Gospels, it sounds like Jesus healed everyone of everything where he went. And actually Matthew 9:35 says, and Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease amongst the people. We read that, and that's my memory. When I read the Bible, I think, that's what I think of. Jesus went and healed everybody, everywhere. Every sickness and every disease. That's a lot of healing. But we know in life that's not the case. There are people who still have disabilities. There's people who still have illnesses. But sometimes when he came to his hometown of Nazareth, for example, it says he only healed a few sick folks. And I think we've got the scripture from Mark that says that. He could not do any miracles there except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. So we've got to read it in context. Yes, in some places he did heal lots of things. But in some places, like his own hometown, he didn't do very many miracles. He only healed a few people. There was a bit of a reason behind that, but that's another sermon. Because I will tell you a little bit. They only saw him as a carpenter. They didn't actually see him as the Messiah, as the Son of God, as somebody who could heal them. So it was about their faith. And they were offended that he taught in the synagogue with such authority. But anyway, we'll get to that one. In Mark 6, verse 5, that's the one that was just up, wasn't it? We don't need to read that again then. Okay. In other versions it says, and he can do no mighty work there. So he wasn't able to perform those miracles that he had done elsewhere. And the needs were great back then, just as they are today. People struggling with poverty, illness, disability, abuse, and even loneliness, just as we have today. Do you feel you have to say yes to every request of you? Do you believe that you have to help everyone that comes across your path? Are you of the opinion that it is your job to do everything or save everyone? Hello, not even Jesus felt it was his job to do everything. He knew what he was to do was the will of his Father. So if we are to follow in Jesus' footsteps or his footprints, we need to find out what the will of the Father is for us. Not just to try and do it all ourselves, but to actually walk in the way of Jesus and see who is the people that God is wanting us to stop and encounter one-on-one. Point number 5, and this is the last point, because I think we're running over time. Point 5, Jesus took time out. I saved the best till last. Jesus took time out. Did you realise that he did? You think, Jesus is so busy. How did he have time? And we think we're so busy. We don't have time to take time out. Well, Jesus was busy and he took time out. We probably think that Jesus worked 24/7 every day of the year for his whole entire life. Well, actually, the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, those books, he's only 3.5 years that we actually... So he worked really hard for 3.5 years. Well, that is accounted. I'm sure he did work a little bit. He probably worked with his dad as a carpenter in those. But it's only recorded 3.5 years. And then, kind of like he retired. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Work only 3.5 years and then retire. Don't think that happens. But we see when we read the scriptures, there's ebbs and flows. So it's ups and downs in Jesus' life. There are periods where he's busy teaching to crowds and busy healing and visiting people. But there are times where he is sitting at his friends' houses having a meal. And Mark often jokes about the chicken barbecue wings that he has at Martha. Honey smoky barbecue chicken wings, that's right. Got to get that. At Martha's house. There's many times where he would retreat back to Mary and Martha and Lazarus' house. And they're just sitting, chilling, having a meal together. He hung out with friends, everybody. Do you hang out with friends on a regular basis? Or are you too busy with everything that's going on in life? It's even recorded in Scripture, he invited himself to other people's houses. I don't know that I give you permission to do that, like to invite yourself to someone else's house, but maybe ask the question, hey, would you like to catch up? And they might say, oh, come to my house. You can certainly invite someone to your house, that's certainly appropriate. Because don't forget, Jesus didn't have a house to invite people to. Most of us here, I think, have a house that we can invite people to. Or we can go back for coffee. It's not about Jesus didn't need a home to practice hospitality. He met with people and he took time out to have time with friends. So I think the verse in Luke is coming up. It says, when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. I do not recommend randomly going to strangers and saying, I'm inviting myself to your house. So Jesus is God and he knows Zacchaeus, and so he would have been, and he brought a group of friends with him, so it was not Jesus going on his own just to a random person's house. But the invitation is there to get to know strangers. I think that's the message. Get to know people you don't know and make time to connect with them. And Jesus even took naps. I like this one. I like naps. Who likes naps? Yeah, who's going to have a nap this afternoon? Oh, there's a few people. He took a nap on a boat in a storm. Do you remember that story? And the other people in the middle of the storm had to wake Jesus up and say, hey, it's a storm going on. He could even fall asleep when there was craziness going on. Are you able to rest in the middle of your craziness? I think that's a hard task. Can you rest in the craziness, Steve?
I can.
You can. Oh, that's a good... Awesome. Yes. Yeah. But it's a good model to follow, is it not? When your life is crazy busy, go and take a nap. Maybe if you're working, it might not be appropriate with your line manager to just take a nap. But the theory behind it, yes, so no sleeping in the thrift shop, Megan. But in life, no driving buses. Do not take a nap while driving a bus. Holy moly. My goodness, I'm in trouble today. Giving you bad advice. Again, I said, this is learnings that I've learned. If you get something out of it, that's happy days. I want to read to you from Luke 5:15 and 16. Yet the news about him spread all the more, so that crowds of people came to hear him and to be healed of their sicknesses. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. What word in that sentence stands out to you? Withdrew? What else? Prayed? Lonely. Yeah. What's after Jesus? Often. How often do you withdraw to lonely places to pray? That was like a smack with a wet fish on my face. How often do I withdraw to lonely places and pray? I'm good at praying on the go. In the moment, when something's happening, I'm firing up all sorts of prayers. Help me! Give me patience! Actually, I try not to pray that one because the situation usually gets worse when I ask for patience. But that withdrawing away to lonely places. I love sitting in my garden, but it's very miserable in the rain at the moment, in the cold. But that's me withdrawing out of my home even, out of what's going on, into a place where I'm by myself. Lonely does not mean you're sitting feeling sad. Lonely, in this sense, is about being on your own, away from distractions. Often. Jesus often. This is the greatest footprint we need to follow. is withdrawing often, taking the time out to connect and pray. Prayer is not about the words we speak. It's about the connection we have with God in the moment. Sometimes prayer is listening, not speaking at all, admiring his creation, drawing a picture, listening to music, withdrawing often to lonely places. And in this same story, Jesus has many people wanting to see him and get his attention. We have sometimes many people vying for our attention, trying to grab us and say, I need to speak to you. I don't know. But what's the model Jesus is saying is most important, is that withdrawing away. I'm not saying run away from people, but get it in balance. Take your time away. Jesus often withdrew to lonely places. He took time away from everyone and everything. If Jesus needed to do this often, how much more do we need to do it? So today I want you to think, whose footsteps are you following? How could you follow in the footsteps of Jesus more? Jesus called his disciples to come and follow him. And we were going to sing the kids' song, I have made you fishers of men. If you follow me. Not me, Jesus. You know the song because we practiced it, didn't we? Jesus called his disciples to follow him, to live with him and live like him. We don't get to necessarily have the physical Jesus to live with us, but we certainly have that responsibility to live like him. How could your life reflect more of Jesus' life? There are so many ways, and certainly the 5 that I've given you today is not the end of it. They're not the only 5. They're just the 5 that have been impacting for me. I just wanted to share today. Jesus was not rushed. Jesus allowed interruptions. Jesus met with people one at a time. Jesus didn't attend to everyone and everything, and Jesus took time out. We're going to sing a song. It's called I Will Follow. And it's talking about following in Jesus' footsteps. So I'm going to invite the singers and the musicians to come up. So it talks about following his ways and to do as he does, as Jesus does. And the chorus says, where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Who you love, I'll love. Who you serve, I'll serve. If this life I lose, I will follow you. Is this your prayer, that you want to do what Jesus does? Do you want to go where Jesus goes? Do you want to stay where Jesus stays?